The sound that erupted from Shadow's throat outside room 208 wasn't just barking, it was pure desperation, a primal scream that echoed through the empty hallways of Lincoln Middle School like a ghost's wail. The German Shepherd's massive frame trembled as he clawed frantically at the locked door, his normally disciplined demeanor completely shattered. Principal Williams rushed down the corridor, her footsteps echoing against the tile, but when she saw the raw terror in Shadow's eyes and heard his voice crack with each desperate howl, she knew that whatever lay behind that door would haunt them all forever. If you believe in second chances, the power of loyalty, and miracles that come on four legs, please hit the like button and subscribe to Pawsitive Tales. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that sometimes the most incredible rescues happen when we least expect them. Your support helps us bring you more stories of hope and healing. Shadow had been Zion's constant companion for 2 years now. Zion was a 12-year-old boy who hadn't spoken a word since his parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. The trauma had locked his voice away, leaving him to communicate through drawings and gentle gestures. The school had assigned Shadow as his therapy dog, and the bond between them had become legendary among the staff and students of Lincoln Middle School. Where Zion went, Shadow followed, and somehow the dog seemed to understand the boy's silent language better than any human ever could. That Tuesday afternoon had started like any other. Zion was sketching in his notebook during lunch break while Shadow lay peacefully beside him. But as they passed room 208, a storage room that had been locked for months after being cleared out, Shadow suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. His ears perked up, his nose twitched frantically, and for the first time since Zion had known him, Shadow pulled against his lead, straining toward that particular door with an urgency that made Zion's heart race. Room 208 had been abandoned since the school's renovation project began. It was supposed to house old furniture and forgotten supplies, nothing more. The janitor had mentioned that sometimes he heard strange noises from inside, but everyone assumed it was just the building settling or maybe mice. No one had bothered to investigate further. After all, what could possibly be important enough to warrant opening a dusty storage room? But Shadow knew something the humans didn't. His sensitive nose had detected a scent that made his every instinct scream with alarm, the scent of human fear, desperation, and something else that made his heart pound with recognition. He had smelled this before, during his training as a search and rescue dog, before he became Zion's therapy companion. It was the scent of someone who had been lost for far too long. As Shadow's barking grew more frantic, teachers began gathering in the hallway. Mrs. Rodriguez, the guidance counselor, tried to calm him with treats and soothing words, but Shadow was beyond consolation. He threw his full weight against the door, his claws scraping against the metal as if he could tear it open through sheer willpower. Zion stood beside him, his small hands pressed against Shadow's trembling back, and for the first time in months, there were tears streaming down the boy's face. Principal Williams fumbled with her master keys, her hands shaking as she tried each one. Shadow's barking had become hoarse and desperate, echoing through the hallway like a battle cry. When the lock finally clicked open and the door swung wide, everyone in the corridor held their breath. The room was dim and dusty, filled with stacked chairs and forgotten textbooks. But in the far corner, behind a curtain that should have hidden nothing but an old window, there was movement. A small figure emerged from the shadows, a child, thin and trembling, with hollow eyes that had seen too much darkness. It was Irfan, a 9-year-old boy who had vanished from this very school 3 years ago when he was just 6. The case had gone cold, the police had given up, and his parents had divorced under the crushing weight of their grief and mutual accusations. Everyone believed he had been kidnapped or worse. No one could have imagined that he had been here all along. The story of Irfan's disappearance began 3 years earlier on what should have been an ordinary field trip day. Irfan had always been a quiet, troubled child, carrying the heavy burden of his parents' constant fighting and his own deep-seated belief that he was unwanted. On that fateful morning, while other children boarded the bus for their field trip, Irfan had slipped back into his classroom to retrieve a drawing he had made, a picture of a family holding hands under a bright sun, the family he desperately wished he could have. The cleaning staff, assuming the room was empty, had locked the door behind them. When Irfan realized he was trapped, he had screamed and pounded on the door, but the sounds were lost in the chaos of the school day. By the time silence fell, everyone had gone home, and Irfan was alone in the darkness. Fear and shame had kept him from trying to escape when he finally found a way out through the ventilation system. Instead, he had chosen to remain hidden, surviving on scraps from the cafeteria and water from bathroom faucets, moving through the building like a ghost. For 3 years, Irfan had lived in the shadows of Lincoln Middle School. He knew every ventilation duct, every unlocked storage room, every hiding place where a small boy could disappear. He had watched other children learn and play and laugh, always from a distance, always invisible. The isolation had nearly broken him, but somehow he had endured, clinging to the hope that someday, someone would find him and tell him he mattered. Shadow approached Irfan slowly, his earlier desperation replaced by gentle understanding. The dog seemed to recognize the depth of the child's trauma, moving with the careful grace of a creature who had spent years learning to heal broken hearts. When Shadow gently nuzzled Irfan's hand, the boy looked up with eyes that hadn't seen kindness in so long he had almost forgotten what it felt like. Zion, still silent but moved by something deeper than words, reached into his pocket and pulled out one of his drawings. It showed 2 figures, a boy and a dog, standing together under a bright sky. He held it out to Irfan, and for the first time in 3 years, Irfan smiled. It was a broken, tentative expression, but it was real, and it was beautiful. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but Irfan refused to let Shadow leave his side. The dog had become his lifeline, the bridge between his years of isolation and the possibility of healing. As they carried him to the ambulance, Irfan's weak voice whispered the first words he had spoken in 3 years. "Thank you, Shadow. Thank you for finding me." The news of Irfan's rescue spread like wildfire through the community and beyond. The boy who had been given up for dead was alive, and it was a therapy dog's unwavering instincts that had brought him back to the light. Shadow became known as the hero of hope, but those who knew him best understood that he had simply done what came naturally. He had listened to a cry for help that no human ear could hear. The reunion with Irfan's parents was heartbreaking and beautiful in equal measure. 3 years of grief, guilt, and blame melted away the moment they saw their son alive. The divorce proceedings were dropped, family therapy began, and slowly, painfully, they started to rebuild what had been broken. Irfan would need years of counseling and medical care, but he was alive, and that was a miracle no one had dared to hope for. Lincoln Middle School transformed Room 208 into the Found Room, a safe space where any student who felt lost, forgotten, or invisible could come to be heard. Shadow and Zion became regular visitors, offering silent comfort to children who needed to know they mattered. The 3 of them, boy, dog, and the child who had been lost, formed an unlikely family bound together by their shared understanding of what it meant to be found. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe in the power of never giving up on the lost and forgotten, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others. Sometimes the most important rescues happen when we refuse to stop listening, even when the world has gone silent. Leave a comment below and let us know about a time when someone refused to give up on you, or when you refused to give up on someone else. The most profound lesson of Room 208 wasn't about Shadow's incredible instincts or even about the miracle of finding Irfan alive. It was about the truth that no one is ever truly invisible, no cry for help ever goes completely unheard, and sometimes the most important voice in the darkness belongs to someone who refuses to stop barking until the lost are found. In a world that often moves too fast to notice the forgotten, Shadow reminded everyone that love has no expiration date, hope has no statute of limitations, and healing can begin with something as simple as refusing to walk past a locked door. Please comment below with the name of someone in your life, whether human or animal, who refused to give up on you when you felt lost or forgotten. We read every comment, and your stories inspire our next videos about the power of never giving up on those who need us most.